For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson has joined us from London. Great to have you, Michael. Great to have you. Morning.
Morning. As far as Asia Pacific's concerned, what we've seen is a bit of an overflow from the rebound last night on the Dow. Not massive. There was a huge drop. The markets are still extremely volatile. But the one thing is, I think the main headline out of Asia Pacific is that China is keeping its medium-term rates steady. And I think you can take it from that they are sort of defending the strength of the yuan, or at least continuing to try to support it. And the Shanghai Composite gained a little, quite honestly. But basically, those seem, I think, are the main headlines out of Asia Pacific. As far as the United States are concerned, futures little changed for today. We saw a little bit of a rebound yesterday. It was a fairly choppy session. Once again, it's very difficult to look at these markets and actually get any conclusions about them. They seem to go down, and then the next day they're up again. I suppose you could be saying from that given those hot inflation figures that we had a couple of days ago, we're going to be looking at some big data today as well. There's a raft of stuff coming up today. Retail sales, import prices, and jobless claims, plus the Philadelphia Fed, plus the Empire State Business Manufacturing Survey. So the people are wondering what the rise is going to be. Maybe it'll be as much as 1% when the Fed actually announces it next week. The PPI figure yesterday was relatively soft in the United States. But as I say, it's really, really difficult. I said right at the beginning, before these inflation figures were out, it would be difficult to take too much from, and I think that's probably the case. But here's an interesting one, actually. This is a company called Patagonia, and what they do is they do outdoor clothing in the United States, and the founder has donated the entire $3 billion company to fight, there he is, Yvon Chouinard, and his spouse and his adult children. The family are actually giving all the company away to fight climate change. How they'll actually do it, again, the granular detail of that we await to see, but that's quite a move for somebody who is committed to fighting climate change. Turkey. Now, here's an interesting one. The US and the EU have stepped up pressure on Turkey to crack down on Russia's sanctions. What they feel as though is that part of its banking sector is being used for illicit finance. MIR, the Russian finance system, are linked to some of Turkey's banking sector, and that's actually what the US and the EU is talking to Turkey about right now. Here, the major move from Kwasi Kwarteng, the new chancellor, is to scrap bankers, or he intends to scrap the cap on bankers' bonuses. Now, this was introduced in 2008. For him, it appears to be a clear signal that what he's trying to do is recreate a sort of second Big Bang, a Big Bang 2. If you remember your history, Big Bang took place 1985. It was when the city actually opened up its doors to lots of overseas companies under Margaret Thatcher, well thought of as being a good place within which to do business. That what he wants to do is to attract banks back to London, and of course, if you've got higher bonuses, you can afford to pay lower salaries, and they're probably not mentioned in the small print. But whilst Wall Street banks, here's a good one, whilst they are launching, some Wall Street banks are launching this kind of back to the office thing, and Tesla's not a bank, of course, I understand that, but it's also getting everybody back to work, and good heavens, they're finding there isn't the office space for them. So there we are. But how about this? The bank, Citigroup, has just opened a new hub for junior staff. Guess where? In the seaside city of Malaga on the Costa del Sol. What they're hoping is that people will be attracted into the business by the delights of Malaga and working in the sunshine for a Citigroup bank. I told you about inflation yesterday. It didn't reach 10%, as many people had feared. However, it is still placing a lot of pressure on the governor of the Bank of England. Inflation is still the highest in the UK and the highest in G7, if that list means anything to you. I can tell you that the cost of living is clearly beginning to bite. It could be 0.75 percentage point. This postponed meeting was going to be today, obviously because of what's happening in the rest of the nation. It's not happening today. It's happening next week. But rates at least 3% by the end of the year. That's the current thought about it. And will Andrew Bailey maintain his independence? Will the Bank of England maintain its independence? I suspect that there is a bit of a move actually to move away from that. What would that mean for somebody who has said, I want to be independent? I don't know. Maybe that could be a resigning matter. I'm not saying you heard it here first. My mind works on these kind of ways, and I'm wondering, whether the Bank of England could continue in its independence if it's being pressured by the Chancellor and the government to try to contribute towards the UK's growth. And finally, oil is rebounding very, very slightly. Again, the market's very choppy, very, very volatile. The usual kind of story, which you're probably beginning to get the hang of by now, because it seems to happen every day. But if there's any kind of thought of increased demand from China, then the oil price tends to rise. And China is also easing some of its COVID lockdowns once again. So that's adding to the oil price. That is the global view.
All right, Marco, two things. Number one will be about the inflation rates in the UK and America. CPI numbers are not doing any better. So I don't know probably the reason why inflation rate is slowing or didn't accelerate at the pace we expected it to accelerate. Could it be because of those subventions given out of petrol taxes? Could that be the case? But CPI is, goodness me, miles and miles away, floating away, just surging on in America. Also, I want to talk about the after effect of the Ukraine war. Ursula von der Leyen was speaking yesterday, and she said that they have been able to cut those dependencies on Russia. Now it's about 9% now from about 20% that it used to be before. They're looking at Norway, they're looking at America and all of that. But there's still a big problem because they have to put in subsidies for homes to be able to tackle energy bills and the likes. Wouldn't those monies, increase the backlog the EU has got from COVID and show a possibility of inflation in an EU zone that's already knocking at 9% inflation?
I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's a big job to do. And America is already saying that their fracking industry, they're saying that this morning, or rather saying it yesterday, that their fracking industry is not going to magically start sending oil to Europe. So it's very much on its own. I have absolutely no idea. I say this every time you ask me this. I don't know what's happening in Russia right now because it's impossible to get any information out of it. I mean, their propaganda is working overtime. It appears as though Ukraine has made some advances into territory that it occupied. Some people are wondering whether this is going to be the collapse of the Russian Federation. I simply have no idea, and I don't think anybody else has either. It may be that what von der Leyen is saying is a continuation of her wish that there should be some kind of cooperation between the EU countries. Well, I think it'll be Germany probably doing most of the asking, quite honestly, and a lot of states within the EU, and remember there are 27 nations within the EU, are saying to themselves, hang on a second, we haven't been profligate. We didn't put all our eggs in one basket. We didn't recommend that we should get all our energy or the majority of our gas from Russia in the way that Germany does. So why are they coming to us for help? And this is something which I think Putin has been playing on quite successfully, although there appears to be an overall agreement and an overall thing about each state supplying the other in a new cooperation. I'd be interested to see how it works once the temperatures start to fall. As far as CPIs are concerned, I think the one takeaway from all this, particularly in the United States, is the only reason it came down in the United States is because of fuel prices. And I think the same thing happened here as well. It helps the politicians if this stuff is cheaper at the pump. Unfortunately, the voice of the poorer doesn't necessarily get heard. And that really is where this inflation is beginning to bite now, in food and services, both of which are large parts of poorer people's household budgets. And I think that's going to bite. But you won't be hearing a lot about that for the moment. It's mainly about fuel prices. And remember, particularly in the United States, that's one of the things that Biden actually vowed he would reduce before the midterm elections, strangely, in November. Need I say more?
Okay, very quick things. I'll try as much as possible to be extremely brief. The first is Ursula von der Leyen sending across a message of resolve that, look, sanctions against Russia have come to stay. And she was also boasting that Russian industries are in tatters. In other words, trying to encourage other EU nations to go ahead. But the two major issues, do you think that they will be able to forge a consensus on that? A proposal on windfall tax on oil, gas, and coal companies, and they put in a cap on electricity consumption by about 5%. That's one. Now, Kwasi Kwarteng, yes, his own proposal also about putting a cap on, removing the cap on bonuses for bankers. Well, at a time when many households are facing terrible hardships, how would that play out? Would there be additional rules in place to ensure that, this reversal of Solvency II under, Brexit exit, matters will not be abused by senior managers in banks, even if you can say, yes, it's a positive attempt to try to attract bankers, and investment to London, which we have always said, if anybody goes, will always remain strategic as a financial capital. And then the third thing, China, this morning, decided to ease monetary, policies, retaining, what it did last month in August. Is that China, the People's Bank of China, accepting a dose of reality? Because when the PCOB took those steps in August, it led to a depreciation of the yuan, with the yuan falling up to about 3% against the dollar. And many were surprised that China was lowering interest rates against, what was being done in other developed economies.
I think that when you have a command economy like China and you have an autocracy, as there is in China, you can massage the currency. That's what's going on here, and it's clear before the big meeting of the Communist Party next month, to go into that with a weakening yuan would not look very good indeed. That appears to be what's going on. I mean, these moves that they have are relatively marginal. Still, I think that China, whatever you think about it, will still have to come to terms, and they won't admit it. They will have to come to terms with an aging population and a shrinking workforce. How they do that, I do not know. But that appears that they feel as though the world is tilting eastwards. It probably is, but that isn't to say that they won't face these big problems in the future. And then there's Taiwan, and so we go on, don't we? As far as the bankers' bonuses are concerned, Kwarteng is unapologetic about this, and he says, yeah, of course people are going to say exactly what you've just said. But the fact of the matter is that we're going to get growth. It's going to come from sectors like the financial sector. And if that's going to grow, it means attracting banks to London. And he's completely unapologetic about that. Because that's what he is concentrating on. You're right to say that a lot of people will look at that who are going through big problems as far as their household budget is concerned. The Chancellor says he doesn't care. I mean, not in so many words, but it's clear that he doesn't, because bonuses, although this would not work well on the doorsteps of Northern England, for example, but you say, look, what it means is the bonuses mean you can pay people lower salaries and they've got to earn their bonuses. Of course, that won't ring true. As far as Russia's concerned, once again, I have absolutely very little idea about what's going on. I think any kind of triumphalism is probably not a good idea. And actually, I would add to that by saying that even the Ukrainians, who were originally talking about Russian soldiers as orcs. You remember this kind of legendary, horrible stuff from Legend and the ORCS, orcs. I think it's Tolkien, actually. They're now not saying that because they realise that whatever happens, there will have to be, however long it takes, some kind of accommodation with Russia. This is not an off-ramp for Putin. None of this American stuff. This is just real life. And you've got to get on with your neighbours. And there is no point in actually destroying destroying them or engaging in triumphalism right now. Maybe against the leaders, but not against the nation. And if you don't believe me, I mean, go back to the Marshall Plan, which you know very well in the 1950s, was precisely because of that. Because the Americans realized there's no point after the war in creating long-term enemies. You know, give them as much support as you can. And I think that any kind of triumphalism from Europe is probably mistaken as far as Russia's concerned. And we don't even know what the outcome's going to be.
Thank you, Michael.
Now for business updates across the African continent, Rotas Adiri joins us. Good morning, Rotas.
Good morning, Sindhu. Good morning, Friday. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, we begin in Kenya. President Ruto has, said that petrol specifically, petrol subsidies are going to be removed with immediate effect. And I say petrol because diesel and kerosene, to some extent, subsidies will remain there. Let's take a look at the energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, Energy Petroleum Regulatory Authority. That press release just highlighted there. They say in accordance with Section 3 of the Petroleum Act, and the EPRA has calculated the maximum retail prices of petroleum products will be enforced from the 15th of September to the 14th of October. So that begins today. Maximilian, they'll be paying the full price. We move to the second part of their press release. They say that although the subsidy for super petrol has been removed, a subsidy of about 20 shillings and 26 shillings has been retained for diesel and kerosene respectively in order to cushion consumers from the otherwise high prices. You might ask, well, why is that? Well, they have clear, transparent consumption data with respect to petrol, diesel, and kerosene. Petrol amounts for the most of what they're paying on subsidies, and so that has to go immediately. Here's quotes from President Ruto in his address. Didn't waste time. On fuel subsidies alone, taxpayers will spend a total of 144 billion shillings, a whopping 60 billion in the last 4 months. If the subsidy continues to the end of the financial year, it will cost taxpayers 280 billion shillings, equivalent to the entire national government development budget. Go on subsidy. Continues. In addition to being very costly, consumption subsidy interventions are prone to abuse. Preach, Mr. Ruto. They distort markets and they create uncertainty, including artificial shortages of the very products being subsidized. What's an irony? What's an irony? And then he addresses cost of living. Says the cost of living challenges are related to production. Our strategy to bring down the cost of living is predicated on empowering producers. Our priority intervention, therefore, and that means subsidies, is to make fertilizer, good quality seeds, and other agricultural inputs affordable and available. So that's where they're going to try and focus. You increase the supply of food, you bring down prices. Still in Kenya, Kenya is going to pilot the very first data hub for real estate. Rufai will love this. Data. Yep. They are going to show for investors to be able to go to a hub, find out how much it costs to build a building, the amount of time it takes to be completed, the costs that have been inputted, the underserved areas of real estate. A number of companies are coming together for this. The Center for Affordable Housing and Finance, CAHF, Financial Sector Deepening Africa Investments, Real and International Housing Solutions. They've come together to form the Affordable Housing Investment Alliance, and their first pilot is Kenya. I challenge them to come to Nigeria and do the same so that we can see how much these items cost. Yeah, but they can do it. It's very, 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 very possible. So this housing data hub is going to particularly help investors when it comes to knowing what the costs are for real estate so they can plan ahead and come in. I suspect, I predict that you'll see an inflow of FDI in the real estate segment. We move to Ghana. Good gracious Lord. Ghana inflation is now at 33.9% for August. It was 31.7% for July. The statistics agency said it is still fuel that is pushing everything. And to quote Dr. Strange in Avengers Infinity War, Ghana is in the end game now. We move to Nigeria, and with Pimipre Silva at the Federal Executive Council meeting yesterday says that the Port Harcourt refinery is going to come on stream in December. As far as capacity, you are looking at 60,000 barrels per day. We will see in December if when that happens. Also, we've been talking about the LCCI address. We know Peter Obi postponed his. Well, we now have a date. So he's next up to bat after Atiku. We've dissected Atiku's plan. So Peter Obi is next. He is going to address the LCCI on Monday, September the 19th. So see what plans he has for the economy. And then finally, WhatsApp is making movies. WhatsApp has a short film called Ninja Odyssey, and it profiles Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is, of course, the 2021 NBA Finals MVP and NBA champion with the Milwaukee Bucks. Here's the trailer.
Fighting to find their way home.
Who are you?
In Greece, my teachers told us stories of travelers battling the sea, fighting to find their way home, to fight themselves. I was on that same journey. In Greece, I was Nigerian. In Nigeria, I was Greek. I was living in the middle, between two countries, two identities. Who am I? There were times when even I didn't know that.
All right, so it's a coming-of-age story, and again, this is WhatsApp's first original film, and I mean, WhatsApp is making movies, so that's...
I mean, I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited, but that's what you do when you have a platform. You forget that WhatsApp has got over 1 billion people on their platform.
Yep.
WhatsApp has the capacity to be the biggest publishing company in the world. So it's for
That's
them
incredible.
to publish movies. That's the way you see it.
It's incredible.
It's your numbers. It's your ecosystem. Why is it that we don't gain from Nigerian music that is doing so well all around the world? It's because we don't have those world-class publishing companies here. I bet you.
Real quick,
Yeah.
do you know WhatsApp, if you go, they have a YouTube page now, right?
Yeah.
WhatsApp is advertising international phone calls. So they're basically saying that, listen, you can make international phone calls via WhatsApp. And so you can imagine what that does
because when you look at it,
it's crazy.
pound for pound,
Yeah.
if an investor is to invest in your company, the first thing they'll count for like a company like WhatsApp is the number of users. And for every user, there's a certain amount to it, prorated in dollar. And that's what makes up your market cap. So I'm excited about what is happening. Going over to what's happening in Kenya, I'm excited on what really Ruto is doing.
Yeah, removing those
you
subsidies.
need to cut the cord. And you know, like when you were saying it will bring about people creating artificial scarcity, I just remember Nigeria. Only yesterday, the Nigerian Television Authority was reporting of a fuel scarcity in Port Harcourt. Only yesterday. This is government-owned station reporting fuel scarcity in Port Harcourt because of subsidy.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? We need to cut it off once and for all. And for the real estate ecosystem hub that they're creating online, I'm excited. It's long overdue.
Yeah.
It can be done in Nigeria. I've been one of those because that I've always touted the fact that we can use blockchain to solve the problem of land registration and titling in Nigeria.
Yeah.
You can put all the land titles on a very good blockchain architecture so that it's easy to reach across board.
Yeah.
And it's a possibility I'm looking. I just hope somebody listening to it can pick it up and do it. It's possible.
Anything is
we
possible.
We can open up this ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Lots of dead
Go
capital in
Nigeria.
real estate.
Loads of dead capital.
Doing Salami said it was 900 billion, I
Even
think?
more than
yeah,
that.
I think that's what he said. It's
More
in
than
the real
that.
estate sector.
More than that.
Well, regards to Giannis, I can never bring myself to pronounce what
His
his
last name, I know. It
Is that
kills
supposed to
me.
be Adetokunbo?
It's
I
Adetokunbo
don't
now.
like bastardized Nigerian names. I actually find it quite offensive. I'm just going to call him Giannis and just skip the other thing. This is the second time this week that you've brought a story about Nigerian stories, Disney Plus and WhatsApp choosing Nigerian stories, and that is yet another underexploited treasure trove that we have in this country and we're not doing anything with. I mean, I've been reading about Nigerian stories, haven't I, Rufai? I've been reading your book.
Yes. Oh,
and
thank
we
Wait, is the
have
book out?
no.
Oh, so you have exclusive access
Well,
before
of course I do,
Okay,
Rotus.
so do the privilege.
Well, you must know.
It makes
I mean,
sense.
really?
It makes complete
yeah,
sense.
so I've been reading Rufai's book. So, yeah, we have the best stories, don't we? And it's really amazing that that has been recognized, but I hope that we actually monetize it.
Yes,
I'm always talking about what South Korea has been able to do with their, their art with regards to K-pop. That's
Yeah.
$1 billion industry.
Yeah.
K-beauty, $1 billion industry. Their movies, they're winning Oscars, they're winning Emmys.
Yeah.
I mean, how could Squid Game, the actor beat Brian Cox just the other day at the
Yeah,
Emmys.
the Emmys,
right,
I mean, we need to be at that level, and
Yeah.
we will get there. We must do. With regards to fuel subsidy in Kenya, I mean, the first time you shared this story, you knew even then that it would be short term because it just makes perfect sense for it to be short term. Only in Nigeria have we found ourselves in this pit,
Never ending.
decade after decade. It's tragic.
Yeah.
Okay, let me start with Peter Obi.
Yeah.
The last time you brought the story, you said there was a postponement and not enough explanation was given. But it's good to now hear that Mr. Peter Obi would speak before the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry on September 19. And we have said also on this program that other chambers of commerce should follow the example of the SCCI to create a platform for us to hear from the leading candidates. And I also made the point that, look, it should not be restricted to just those that have been classified as the top 3 or the top 4. You know, all the candidates who want to lead Nigeria should be given an opportunity. Maybe perhaps in the cross-fertilization of ideas, we'll be able to get, you know, to share ideas, and candidates can borrow from one another. And whoever wins at the end of the day will have listened to more positive conversation around the issues rather than, you know, the cat fights that we seem to have in some of the political parties. So we look forward to what Mr. Peter Obi will be saying, you know, on various issues that affect us. Second, you talked about Kenya. Kenya, subsidy rate, you know, on petrol alone was up to about 140 billion shillings. And it was resolved by the energy authority in that country that this was not sustainable. But they could not do it. They were supposed to have removed that subsidy before the election. But they had to keep moving it forward, because in Kenya, you know, a liter of petrol is about 160 shillings. Now, as of this morning, it's about 179 shillings. But what we've seen here is William Ruto, who had promised a bottom-up approach, you know, in his inaugural speech, made it very clear that that subsidy has to go. Because Kenya is heavily indebted, either to China or to other lending organizations. And with 140 billion shillings just sitting down there being owed oil marketers, he said, no, that will have to go. So this is a good example of showing courage, hitting the ground running, supplying the political will that is very necessary. But this will lead to rise in cost of living, as the Kenyan Transporters Association is already protesting. What is it that the government has in place to address the consequences of the additional hardship that the people of Kenya are going to experience? In Nigeria, you call it palliatives. President Ruto has not said anything in that direction. As for Giannis Adetokunbo, you can call him Adetokunbo.
I mean,
because Adetokunbo,
it's a tongue twister.
You know, it's a Greekification of a popular Yoruba name, Adetokunbo. And it's interesting that it is named, the film, 12 Minutes, you know, it's named Niger Odyssey. And it's about relationship, it's about identity, it's about adversity. In the Odyssey by Homer, a 24-book, you know, narrative. I'm sure you are familiar very much with Homer. You know, this was about people trapped at sea trying to find their ways home. I hope that, you know, in the course of Adetokunbo's own Odyssey, is reminding us that he remembers his Nigerian origins, and he wants to find his way home at some point, you know, and that is not just exclusively Greek, but that, you know, he also remembers his Nigerian heritage. That part of his Odyssey is something that we would like to find interesting. However, we should have the objective enabling conditions in Nigeria to produce more people like him, not in diaspora, but also an environment here that will respect talent, not this hatred of talents in Nigeria and this glorification, deification of mediocrity that seems to have become a way of the Nigerian life.
Well said, Doctor.
Well, speaking of Homer, or should
Homer?
not? Yeah.
Well,
he was quite crafty, wasn't he? And the gods dealt with him.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.